best nighttime radio.
And indeed, it is the best time to listen to what has been happening in and around your world, from the continent and beyond. As we say, one planet, countless stories. We bring you the voices, the faces, the stories, and the perspectives that matter. Channel Africa, the Africa perspective. So right now, we talk about the United Nations Human Rights Office. It's condemned the killing of Palestinian journalists in Israeli strikes on Gaza, warning that the world must demand accountability for the mounting toll. The latest deaths bring the number of journalists killed since the war began to at least 247. It's at least, the numbers are not necessarily the full picture. The 5 victims, in this case, Ahmed Abu Aziz, Hassam al-Masri, Mariam Daga, Mohammed Salama, and Moaz Abu Taha, worked for outlets including Middle East Eye, Associated Press, Al Jazeera, and Reuters. They were amongst at least 20 people who died when Israeli forces struck Gaza's Nasser hospital in Khan Yunis on Monday. For more, we're joined by senior reporter at Al Jazeera Arabic channel in Gaza, Tamer Alnishaal. A very good evening to you, and condolences to you as the family of Al Jazeera, but I'd say as the media fraternity, because we've seen many fallen comrades simply because they're trying to bring the truth to the world.
Thank you very much. Of course, what we are witnessing in Gaza is an ongoing genocide and ongoing crimes against Palestinian civilians, including the Palestinian journalists. As you mentioned, we counted during this 22 months of this ongoing war and ongoing genocide, more than 240 Palestinians. Now we are talking about 247 Palestinian journalists have been killed during this genocide, in a number which is the highest number in any conflict or war zone in the current history, in comparison with all war zones. So we are witnessing a genocide against the Palestinian reporters, against the Palestinian journalists. And we understand the reason behind this. It's clearly the Israeli occupation forces. They want to hide the truth. They want to hide the genocide from not being covered by these great and brave journalists. They want these crimes not to be covered. And they are targeting in a systematic way the Palestinian journalists to target the truth, and also not allow for any international journalists to get into Gaza to cover. So they are targeting the few eyes who are covering from there, and the few loud voices who are covering from Gaza in a systematic way. And today we are saying it clearly. How many Palestinian journalists do need the world and the international organizations who are calling for the protection of journalists in all the world? How many Palestinian journalists they need to be killed in order to intervene seriously? Yes, to do something and intervene seriously to stop this massacre and genocide
Tamer,
against the Palestinian civilians.
I want to just give people a sense, because, you know, as you say, these colleagues are dying because they're trying to give the truth to the world. The Israelis, you've seen Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu call the incident a tragic mishap, meaning it was unintended. But I want you to give our listeners and viewers a sense of what it's really like to report in a conflict zone. I don't think anybody who's reported, who's been on the ground in dangerous situations, actually realizes there is no time to make up stories.
Yes, of course, there are many challenges. We are talking about a place for almost 2 years. It's closed, under tough siege. The Israeli occupation forces don't allow for any international journalists to get into Gaza, and left a few Palestinian journalists in this area. These brave journalists are working a great and unique coverage, and they are determined to continue their work in order to let the world to understand what's happening. And because of this determination, they are targeted in a systematic way by the Israeli occupation forces. And we are witnessing this increased number of Palestinian journalists. We're talking not just about Palestinian journalists who have been killed, also their families. Those journalists who are covering inside Gaza, they are native Palestinians. They are not outsiders. They have their families. Their homes have been demolished, and we have many of our colleagues. They lost their families. I will mention you a name. Mu'min Lishrafi is our correspondent in Gaza City. He lost 22 of his family, including mother and father. And despite that, he continues to work because he's determined to his professionalism, to his humanity. And so we are saying it clearly. It's the time, even it's late, to say justice for Palestinian journalists, justice for these Palestinian civilians, and stop this massacre, and allow for all international journalists to get into Gaza. You are a journalist, you have the right to go to that place and doing these interviews on the ground. They have the right to support the Palestinian journalists. It's shame on the international world to leave these journalists to be targeted in this way, and additionally crimes, justifying the crimes. Now what we are witnessing, crimes against journalists, and also justifying these crimes with baseless or by baseless allegations or fabricated accusations, with no any kind of real intervention from this international world to stop such massacres and such crimes against journalists.
Tamer, your colleague Iman Hillis, who is a fact checker, wrote a very moving article about her friend and relative journalist Amna Hamid and her killing, about what actually happened, that there was misinformation that had been spread about her by Israeli media, ensuring that she was targeted. Can you share similar stories of people who have worked on what is really happening in the Middle East, the killing of, we're talking infants, of children under the age of 5, the elderly, women, and the manner in which they killed? What happens to people like that who paint a real picture of what is going on?
Targeting Palestinian journalists doesn't start just in this war. I will mention you, before this war, we witnessed in West Bank, not in Gaza Strip, the killing of our colleague Shireen Abu Aqla, the Jazeera correspondent in West Bank. She has been killed by an Israeli sniper in West Bank. And they killing her, and they changing the narrative 4 times. First, they said we don't have any link to this killing, and they blamed the Palestinian by killing her. And in the end, after a huge pressure, they admitted that an Israeli sniper killed her. During this war, we witnessed a systematic target to the Palestinian journalists, the Palestinian civilians, because they are the only eyes. They are covering what's happening in Gaza. Without their brave work, you won't know what is happening there. Anas al-Sharif, our correspondent, since day one in this war, he has received many threats. I will give you an example. In December 2023, after just a few weeks of his work, he has received a calls from Israeli intelligence officers threatening him from continuing his work. And they said to him, "We know where are you now. You have to stop your work and leave the work and stop covering." Because he refused and continue his work and his brave work, they targeted his house, killing his father. So this is the way, the challenges of the Palestinian journalists in their work, and their brave work to cover. So we have many examples. I will mention you another example of our colleague, Ismail Al-Ghul. He has been arrested in March 2024, and he has been investigated, and he has been released. 4 or 5 months later, they killed him, and they fabricated documents against him to justify the killing. So we are witnessing stages of crimes against journalists by killing and justify the killing. And I want to ask you and ask the audience, why the Israeli occupation forces doesn't allow to any international journalist to get inside to Gaza to cover freely and to give another perspective to what is happening there? Because they don't want the reality, these genocide and these crimes to be covered. They want the truth to be killed and hidden from Gaza.
Tamer, you say it's a death sentence for those who dare take up the challenge of telling what is happening, and particularly what we're seeing is the targeting of health professionals who we've seen being killed in hospitals, and also some of them being personally targeted. So I'm going to talk about the blanket protection of emergency and health and aid workers and journalists, but I want to focus on journalists. What can be done to protect these journalists if they are telling the world what is contrary to what is being said, as in something that is different to the propaganda that is being put out there? How can you be protected? How can you be protected, realistically speaking?
Yes, realistically speaking, we should launch, even if it's late, an international campaign to let the international journalists to get inside to Gaza, to enter Gaza, to have envoys of journalists and representatives of all syndicates and all organizations who are seeking for the protection for journalists in all over the world, to go to Gaza, to support and back their colleagues in the ground. It's the time to have the legal path, and a serious legal path, to put these criminals and killers of journalists and to achieve the justice for journalists. It's the time to stop this genocide and support their colleagues on the ground. It's shame on these organizations, on these institutions who are calling for freedom and for protection of journalists to keep and maintain their silence. The Palestinian journalists don't need words, don't need condemnations and statements. They need a great and real interventions and work.
What
and
does that
serious
intervention
work.
look like, Tamer? That's what I'm trying to understand. Because on the one hand, the Israeli government and military is saying that it's part of casualties of war and they're in the wrong place, wrong time. How can the international community protect journalists in a war zone that doesn't differentiate between friend and foe, or even, as I say in this case, somebody trying to do humanitarian work? Bringing to attention the world what is happening in Gaza is a service. How can you be better protected in an environment where, as I mentioned, infants are being killed?
To stop this tough siege of Gaza, to send journalists there to support the Palestinian journalists and to put the pressure on Israel to allow for international journalists to get into Gaza. We have now a few journalists are working bravely from Gaza. Do you know that we cannot able even logistics to support them? They are suffering from starving. They are suffering.
Yes.
You know, in the case you mentioned about yesterday when they shelled and killed the 5 journalists in Nasser hospital. You know, we have around 3 or 4 Palestinian journalists have been injured. 2 of them in a very serious conditions, and there is no any way to treat them in Gaza in such circumstances. It's the time to support and to send the convoys and send the international journalists to support the Palestinian journalists on the ground. The other thing, which is very important, is to boycott the Israeli narrative in justifying killing journalists. It's the time to stand clearly in the right side of the victims, not trying to find why the killer of journalists, why he killed this journalist. To boycott such narrative of justifying killing journalists, it's very important. And third, legal path. We are in a world calling for justice and for laws and for protection, the right of journalism and the right of speech. It's the time for international criminal court to do its real job to protect the Palestinian journalists and to hold accountability to those killers who are responsible for the killing of the journalists.
Tamer,
So
just finally,
what we are witnessing, what we are calling, it's something, it's basic, but we didn't witness any such. We left these journalists without any support, no real intervention, and just we hear statements and words. And this is, of course, not enough.
Tamara, as a final question, do you think anybody listening to you, watching you, and just relaying the horrors of what your colleagues have been through will ever want to be a journalist brave enough to even cover not even conflict situation, but situations that could put them in conflict with those in power? What do you think is the impact on this on future journalists?
Of course, I want to say yes, they are impact of their great work. Without, we understand they killed Anas al-Sharif and Muhammad Qreqa 2 weeks ago because of their unique work of the coverage of the starvation crisis and the starvation disaster which is ongoing in Gaza. And their work and contribution has left a huge impact in the international world. We understand there are huge solidarity with the Palestinian civilians and with the Palestinian journalists. We appreciate all these emotional support comes from everywhere in the world. But we are saying it clearly to the organizations and to the international institutions who are calling for protection of journalists, for freedom of speech, for human rights, for respect the laws, international laws. It's late and it's shame that you are maintaining and remaining this silence in front of such crimes. We believe that's what we heard from our colleagues on the ground. They are determined to continue their work. They are determined to keep on their brave work, and they will not surrender. And they believe. I was telling you honestly, the voices of our colleagues in the ground. They believe they will be the victory will be in the end for justice, for freedom, and for their great work.
Tamer,
Any occupation force will not win on in such battle which we have. The people they have their right of freedom, the right of working as a journalist and the professional work, and they believe in the end they will end. They will win. Sorry.
Tamer, thank you so much for speaking to us and sharing with us your experiences and those of your colleagues and your impassioned plea for protection by the international community of journalists. Tamer Alnishaal is a senior reporter at Al Jazeera Arabic channel in Gaza. He speaks to us about the 2 strikes on Nasser Hospital in southern Gaza, in which 20 people were killed. That's the figures we have so far, leading to several journalists. Figure was put at about 5. But it's been said that since the war began, 247 journalists have been killed. And as he echoed the sentiments of some, that being a journalist reporting on what is happening in Gaza, reporting the truth, has turned out into a death sentence, that they are not only harassed, threatened with death, but if they continue against those who are against the work that they're doing, that their families have been targeted and killed as well. Speaking about a journalist who's lost 22 family members because of the work that he was doing. What a difficult time it must be to be a journalist in that part of the world, and also just reporting the devastation, the tragedy that you are seeing. So just thinking of those journalists who are out there doing that brave work, impossible work. And that's how we come to the end of Africa World Hour, on a very sad note, I must say, but one pledging solidarity. And I certainly, if the opportunity would come at this age, but it's something that I strongly believe in, that we must have more journalists out there showing the world, so that it must be proven that it's not propaganda, the fact that they are being killed, witnessing killings, murders. That's how we come to the end of Africa World Hour. Next, Shayla and Kumana with African Diaries.